If you recently picked up the violin, you may already know that one of the early songs that you learn as a beginner is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Today we're going to practice it together. Hi and welcome. I'm Aryadna and this is Mindful Strings, where I help you learn the violin on your own time, love your every practice, and fit it into your busy life. On this channel, I share what I wish I knew when I first started to shave years off of your learning journey. I put together a free Get Better at Violin in 15 Minutes guide, so be sure to grab it by clicking the link down below. There's Twinkle Twinkle Little Star for you. Now let's break it down. One great habit that you can incorporate into your practicing is paying close attention to each and every note. In particular, the start of every note. We want each note to start with a clean, clear sound with the bow hooking the string. It sounds like this. If you listen closely, there's sort of a little quiet k sound in the very beginning, like a little click. What this requires is the right proportion of the weight of the bow into the string, or pressure if you will, and the speed of the bow. So if you put too much pressure and go slowly, you're going to end up with a scratchy sound. And if you don't put enough pressure into the string, then the sound will be a little too airy. Certainly, there may be times when you will want to use a lighter sound. However, in the beginning, when you're just honing in your skills of creating a beautiful tone, you want to treat each note with tender love and care. Twinkle Twinkle Little Star begins with open strings. So you're playing 2 quarter note A's and 2 quarter note E's. I typically suggest that my students break down the song in half bows. So in other words, all the quarter notes, which are the shorter notes, will use roughly half a bow, and all the longer notes, like half notes or whole notes, are going to use the full bow. This is not an absolute rule that continues on with you as you get more advanced, but in the beginning it helps to work on the bow this way. It's very easy to get stuck in the middle of the bow because it's kind of easier to make better sound there, but you want to make sure that you're not abandoning the frog. The frog is a little tricky because all of the weight of the bow is leaning on the string, and you've got your hand here as well, so it's the most crucial spot where you're going to really pay close attention to how to manage the weight of the bow with the speed of the bow and the amount of weight you add with your arm. So to start a clean sound at the frog is going to be your first challenge. If you're hearing something like that, try speeding up the bow, or you can try lightening up the pressure a little bit. To get that clean click that I was talking about, you want to put just enough pressure and speed into the very beginning of the note, just like, and then releasing that pressure right away so that the string is allowed to resonate. If you want to learn more about this in detail, check out my video about how to go from scratchy sound to a beautiful tone. I'll link it down below as well. Here we are. Let's just practice the very first measure together. I want you to take a tiny pause after each note, but not lift the bow. Keep the bow on the string. Here you are in the middle. Now see if you can successfully hook the string on the up bow as well. This is usually a little tricky. See how that didn't quite click? What you will notice is that getting a little bit of pressure into the index finger on your bow hand, it's going to help you create that little pop. I think it's especially noticeable on the up bow. Then switch strings. Notice that when I switch strings, my arm angle changes, so the elbow goes down a little bit lower. Let's do it again. You may pause the video and practice this a little bit longer if you're finding that you need more repetitions to get to that clean sound. The next measure has an F sharp, which is a first finger on the E string. If you line up the second join of your index finger with the nut, which is the very bottom of the fingerboard, roughly there is going to be the spot for F sharp on the E string. So you hear E and F sharp. Go ahead and find the F sharp. You can kind of pluck the string with the other finger or just play it a couple of times, make sure that it's in tune. So we've got our 2 quarter note F sharps, and then half note E. Be sure to keep your left wrist straight, thumb pointing up as it lightly rests on the neck of the violin, and first finger ever so slightly pulled back so that this knuckle lines up with the very bottom of the fingerboard. Let's play the second measure one more time together. Find your F sharp. All right, now let's go ahead and try and put it together. So the first 2 measures. A, E, F, sharp, E. You may realize it's not sounding super smooth and connected just yet, which is fine. You will get there, but you're going to have a much more productive time learning this if you actually slow it way down and put these little tiny breaks in between the notes. Because working on bow changes and string changes is an additional skill set that is easier to work on once you have your left hand figured out and kind of the basic sound production figured out. The next section begins with a third finger on the A string, third finger for D, high second finger for C sharp, and first finger for B for the next 2 measures. It's good to prepare all 3 of those notes ahead of time. So ideally, while you're playing the E from measure 2, you're already putting down the third finger on the A string. For beginners, sometimes it's hard to do that without hitting the A string accidentally with your third finger. If you can do it, great. If not, you can give yourself a second and set up the next 3 fingers right before you start measure 3. So because measure 2 ended at the tip, that third measure actually starts at the tip up bow. Going to the middle for the quarter note. Let's do it again. On the last A, which is a half note, you're going to make it all the way back down to the frog. Now let's put the first line together. How'd you do? Let's do it again. Set up your hand. Left hand straight wrist, first position, ready with your first finger. Place the hair on the string. Make sure your right hand is nice and soft and flexible. Wonderful. The next line can be started in two different ways. The easier way is to use an open E string. The more challenging way is to use a fourth finger on the A string to play the same notes. The pinky on the A string can be played in unison with the open string. So first let's go through the easy version. You're just going to play two open E strings. And then back to the A string for that third finger D, C sharp, and then a half note B. And you play the same thing over again, starting on the open E once more. Let's practice it again. Make sure you give yourself enough time to pause, make sure you're not tense, and switch strings. Now let's try to do the more advanced way. Let's find the pinky. So I would just build up to it by playing all the notes. For reaching the E with the fourth finger comfortably, you're going to have to not only make sure that the wrist is straight, but your forearm is rotated more towards the strings, so that the pinky is able to stay round but get closer to the string. You don't want to do it like this. You don't want your fingers glued together or trying to reach to the string here. There's a lot of tension in my hand right now, just showing you this. So rotate it. This is the shape we're looking for. Okay, and see if you can find it. If you don't trust your ears, double check with the tuner. The pinky is typically a weaker finger on the hand, so don't overdo it, just because it takes a while to build the strength and the coordination. So if it starts kind of feeling fatigued, take a break, make sure that you don't get yourself into a situation where your hand starts hurting. One more time, if you will. Find your E, check the shapes of your hands. And I will remind you to set all the fingers down in preparation for that scale going down. Then all you have to do is just take the fingers off. When you do that, when you prepare all four fingers, just make sure that you're not clenching with the whole hand. The most pressure is still going to be going down into the string from the finger that's currently playing the note. The rest of the fingers are kind of resting in their spot. And the final part is the same as the beginning. Let's go ahead and play the whole thing from beginning to end. Ready? Wonderful. When you're practicing, if you play a couple of notes at a time, let's say 2 to 4 notes, this gives you an opportunity to shift your attention to your technique. If you can look in the mirror and just glance at the notes and then look in the mirror and watch your hands, this is going to help you a lot, because the way something feels on the violin is not usually the way that it looks, because there's so much going on. This is like the ultimate multitasking. It really helps to be able to zero in your attention on one thing at a time. Well, sort of one thing at a time. To play the right notes, you still have to have some portion of your attention switching back and forth. But in this particular song, especially with the first measure, for example, because the strings are open, you can look in the mirror and check that your bow is moving parallel to the bridge and that it's in the right spot, not too close to the fingerboard, not too close to the bridge. So it just kind of gives you a little window. It's like, I think of it as putting something under a microscope. It's like you just zoom in and take that one measure under a microscope so you can pay attention to all the things. How does it feel? How does it sound? How does it look? And you can take as much time between the notes as you need to check in with your entire body. Are you tensing up? Are you clenching in your shoulders or in your neck or in your butt cheeks? Do you feel the ground with your feet? It just gives you an opportunity to kind of do a mindful body scan, which in the long run will be very, very useful when you're working on more advanced things. If you have any questions, please write them down in the comments below and let me know if this was helpful. I'm playing around with this practice with me format and would love to hear your feedback. Happy mindful practicing, and I'll see you next time.